Welcome to MySecurity TV. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director for MySecurity Media. Welcome to another episode of Tech and Sec Weekly. As we normally do, I'm just going to run through some slides just in terms of what we have coming up on the show. And we have a couple of new guests today as well. Let me just bring my slides up as we do, and we should be fine. Feeds are all good. Great. Okay, so technology, market trends, aerospace, defence and security. This particular episode will go for about an hour, for the next 60 minutes. We should be streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn and on Facebook. We'll also be sending out the edited version following and across our four domains: aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. We'll get to space eventually, but this session is on cybersecurity. And we have a couple of guests. Geoff Schomburgk, the Vice President for Australia and New Zealand with Yubico. We're going to be walking through the Australian cybersecurity strategy and what it means for company directors. And then we have Hansen, the Chief Executive Officer for Pure Security and Tesserent. And APRA has just released their cybersecurity strategy for the next 4 years, 2020 to 2024. And the two will kind of segue across each other and we'll be covering off. APRA has sort of sent out a bit of a warning that they're going to start to audit a little bit more in relation to cybersecurity. So looking forward to both Geoff and Kurt. As a catch-up, we had Guy and Jacqueline Jane on Friday. So hopefully you enjoyed your Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and then also the 2021 predictions. So that episode is now available. And on next Wednesday, we are having Malaysia's National Telecom Cybersecurity and their Memorandum of Understanding with HGC Global Communications, and looking forward to that. And I will also sort of put out that we've been running a Malaysia Women in Security event. So that's coming up in mid-December, and Dato Amarudin there is also involved with that. So we'll be speaking to Dato Amarudin a couple of times over the next few weeks. Blackout series with Shemaine Tan and Cyber Risk Meetups on the 10th. That's next Thursday then. And sponsored by Recorded Future, and that is with Gregory Tohill. So the numbers are looking pretty good on people registering for that, and that'll be run on the GoToWebinar platform, so you do need to register. But again, watch out with that, with the Cyber Risk Meetups. On the 14th of December, we've got an Active Directory security session with Alcid and Trustwave, Kevin Tran and Ben Moody there. And I've asked for what kind of demo attacks they're going to be doing, but we'll send that out. But again, how is Active Directory being used today and why is it important? You do need to register for that one. But again, that's on the 14th of December at 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Daylight Saving Time. Just put out today our interview with CyberArk, Thomas Fickenshire, who's the Regional Director for ANZ. The identity is the new perimeter. So obviously perimeter and privileged access management. That interview goes for about 20 minutes, and that'll be released as a podcast. And just about to release, it's not out just yet, but on our exclusive with Lenovo, data center and PC market trends for 2020 and what their outlook is for 2021, with Daniel Fields and Sumar Bhatia there, who's the president of their data center group for APAC. That again goes for about 40 minutes, but very insightful, particularly on how data centers and that market's been impacted during COVID-19. In the pipeline, I'm just waiting on the embargo to lift, which will be the 3rd of December for Alkira, and that's on network security and cloud. It's a cloud native company, and I think they've just raised over $70 million. I think the last Series B was 54 million, and I've got an interview with their CTO. On Tuesday, we're also speaking to Nokia, and again, we'll be covering off on cybersecurity strategy, but more from a regional perspective across APAC as well. And then we've got some sessions with Accenture and also Milestone coming up over the next week or two. On this week as well, on the marketplace, in terms of the events that we have listed, PrivSec is now live. The innovation series in Indonesia has gone live today as well. You've also got Cloud Transformation Champions online. I think that's the European Union session with Corinium, and they've been running them in the US and also in Asia. Block Bali is on this week as well on blockchain, obviously in Indonesia as well. And then combating today's major cybersecurity threats faced by enterprise CISOs with net events. That's a UK time, but you can then capture these. These are sort of an ongoing series that we're working with net events on as well, but very insightful if you're into cloud and cybersecurity. The Cyber Risk Leaders magazine is available on the marketplace, and that's pretty much it from me. And what we're going to cover off, we have covered the Australian cybersecurity strategy previously. In fact, we had the head of the Australian Cybersecurity Centre on, Abigail Bradshaw, on one of our podcasts, I think just last month. So again, and we've also covered it as part of our Indo-Pacific series, and we will provide those links in the show notes. But this particular episode, we're going to hear from Geoff. Let me bring Geoff on. Here you go, Geoff. How are you, mate? Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Very good. And what I'm going to do is, let me just go over to the next slide here as well. In fact, I might just go previous and just walk through for the audience if they're not aware, or maybe they are, we'll put it in context. We first had the industry advisory panel report came out. Then we had the strategy, and then we've also had the Protecting Critical Infrastructure and Systems of National Significance came out. The consultation paper came out in August, and I believe the International Cyber Engagement Strategy is also going to be updated as well. So that's kind of there's a bunch of other documents that kind of wrap around these, but these are kind of the key ones. And I'll hand over to Geoff with your slides. Geoff, if you want to share your screen.
Yeah.
And let me just do some clever stuff. So Geoff Schomburgk, the Vice President ANZ with Yubico. Geoff, I've had to check, I think it was 205. Yeah, episode 205, going passwordless with our podcast earlier in the year. And I think things were just starting to go a bit crazy. It was around May. So things were already crazy by May. Yeah, so we can check that out. We'll have that in the show notes as well. Yeah, thank you very much for your time and coming on today. Let me just get rid of some of these graphics so we can actually see your presentation. And you can share your slides now. I'm going to stop sharing mine, bring up yours. There we go.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same.
And yeah, talk us through where you're coming from. Obviously, we're going to focus on what this means for company directors. As it happens, I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. So I know that they've been kind of covering this, and it's a good segue to what we're going to talk about with APRA too, because
yeah.
They're definitely sort of asking the questions, or they should be, and some of our recent CISO roundtables as well, they're finding it a real challenge out there. So yeah, welcome to introduce yourself maybe, and then we'll walk through your presentation.
Great, thanks, Chris. And yeah, it's very topical, as you said. All those different papers and strategies being announced and released, and myself, likewise, a member of the Institute of Company Directors. I sit on a board for a not-for-profit as well, and it just keeps coming up. And and I think this was part of the strategy that the Australian government strategy was a lot about education and lifting the capability. So so working for Yubico, yes, we deal with cyber every day. We deal with multi-factor authentication solutions, really trying to make the internet a safer place for everybody, and that ties in nicely with the vision of the Australian cybersecurity strategy as well. So coming at it from my day job, but also in the role I have, also working on boards and advising to boards as well. I think it's kind of just a nice topic to bring forward. And what I really wanted to do in today's presentation was kind of join the dots a little bit. The perspective of the implications for company directors and the changing landscape where the regulatory authorities, and Kurt, you'll talk about this in your session afterwards as well, is that the regulators are putting more and more accountability on directors. But then from a CISO's point of view, how do you get that message through, and trying to sort of align the conversation so that people are talking the same language. that's really what I wanted to sort of cover today in the few short minutes that we have.
Yeah, look, walk through your slides and we'll talk about it. And for those that are watching, you're welcome to post in a question if you want something particularly answered, or sorry, asked or raised, and welcome to sort of moderate a Q&A if you feel it worthwhile. It's because it's a strategy and it's a national strategy, it's a big topic. So we will come in it from the perspective of the company director.
Yeah.
And likewise, you know, I'm a director, and it's hard enough to keep abreast of everything that's going on. In fact, pre-interview, we're talking about how the year's looking, and, you know, you can get lost just in the geopolitics of what's going on right now, let alone business and how business and government are relating as well. And there's a bit of pushback on the strategy from industry, particularly around the critical infrastructure aspect as well. And I saw the AIIA have come out sort of asking government to be guided by that. And a couple of other sort of pieces have come out with industry, particularly multinationals, if the Australian Cybersecurity Centre and the Australian government will take over in certain systems if a system is attacked. So company directors need to have that in mind as well, where they fit in the market and where their company fits into the strategy.
Exactly. So let me just sort of dive through a couple of slides and let's see how the conversation goes, Chris. The recap, and you've done it before, but you know, just the strategy, what that means, and we all know the big headline of 1.6 billion over 10 years, with the vision of creating a more secure online world for all Australians, the businesses, and you know, the essential services that they work on. So that's a nice sort of three-way component there. But what I'd like to sort of focus on in today's session is from the business side. What are those key themes, as you mentioned, around critical infrastructure? We said a minute ago, you know, uplifting the cybersecurity knowledge across the workforce is pretty critical as well. And then having the right products and services to enable a stronger and more secure environment. So, you know, the people, the processes, and the technology all working together to protect businesses as part of that overall strategy. So, you know, that's the context, and you know, the strategy documents available online. But yeah, where we see the increasing level of threat, it just hasn't gone away. And we've seen, you know, in this COVID world, there's been an increase in attacks targeting COVID. The statistics are that, you know, you're going to get attacked at some stage. So 1 in 3 companies are expected to suffer a data breach in the next couple of years. What does that mean? You know, where does that come from? What are the implications of a data breach? These are the sorts of things that are on the topic and, you know, making directors nervous. So obviously there's real monetary loss. And there's a couple of snaps here from, you know, Marriott, and there was one recently with a media company, Accenture, that's listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. They suffered an attack. Yes, there's monetary loss. From a share price point of view, if you're a listed company, the impact is significant. In the case of Accenture, you know, once they announced the attack, their share price dropped 30% straight away. But some of the analysis that we've done is over in the US and the NASDAQ. You know, the impact within the first 14 days on average is 4%, but it doesn't get better. It actually gets worse over time because of the damage to not only your operations, but the brand as well. So the perception of you as a safe and secure company to deal with, you know, that brand damage can't be underestimated as well. And, you know, disruption to operations, that's significant as well. And, you know, a couple of little snippets we've got there is that, you know, the board will often point that down to, okay, who's responsible here? And, you know, CEOs, CFOs, CISOs, you know, having lost their job as a result of, you know, a data breach. So it's pretty significant implications for the business. It's not just about the financial loss, which is quite significant. So, yeah, moving that forward, what does that mean for directors? And, you know, reference here the APRA flagging a tougher stance to get boards to take security seriously. And as you mentioned, higher levels of expectation around auditing and proving that they're doing the right things. So, try to discover it here of three main areas that cybersecurity is a strategic risk for an organization. It's no longer just something that sits within the IT world. It affects the whole business enterprise-wide. So directors really need to sort of take that perspective of strategic risk. What business areas are at risk? How do I apply a risk management methodology to adopt good governance disciplines to manage those risks? So you don't need to be the expert in cybersecurity, but all boards have got training and expertise around managing risk. So it's just another risk that needs to be managed, and I think that's an important point. There are legal and disclosure implications. The duty of care and due diligence of a director does not go away. But as we're seeing in the likes of AICD publishing their position on this, and APRA and other regulators, really expecting that directors have an adequate standard of cybersecurity implemented within their organisations. And the example here of requiring audits, because they're not sure yet that the level of self-motivation is there yet. So maybe the external, a bit of a stick to say, hey, we're going to require an audit from an external organisation to prove that we have that adequate standard. And yes, APRA is pretty high risk. We're talking about financial and prudential organisations, but the same standards will apply to other organisations, be you a not-for-profit organisation or a commercial enterprise as well. There's growing discussion around cyber insurance, being able to protect yourselves as directors. There's directors' indemnity insurance, but now cyber insurance is available as well. I'm not sure how that really works. It's good to have, but it's like any insurance claim. To get a claim successful, you've got to prove too many things. So I've looked at a couple of cyber policies, and it's evolving. It's not the answer. So I've got cyber insurance, so I don't have to worry. That's certainly not the case. So
a lot of company directors will take that view of just get insurance, as you say. You potentially do fall into the trap of it's just another risk. There's also the sort of risk fatigue with cyber as well. They hear so much about it, and they do think sometimes they can mitigate that with insurance. Alliance came out with a report last week that the claims are up, but they're predominantly being caused by internal error. So again, the not so much inside a threat, but the sort of accidental loss of data, accidental release of data, rather than actual data breaches from an external source. So they are seeing claims, but again, it discloses what type of issues are happening within companies, and often it comes back down to cybersecurity awareness as well.
Yeah, and by all means, as a director, have a look at cyber insurance, but actually read the fine print. What actually covered, what is not covered, and is it value for money? So it's a growing area. But I think that sort of leads to the third point is having access to the right level of expertise to demystify this industry and what these risks are. But as a director, you can't just outsource that. You have to understand that yourself. And maybe there's undertake training across the whole board to increase the level of understanding of cyber and the risks. And again, a plug for my friends at AICD. They've got a couple of different courses there for targeted specifically at directors. But then why not engage an external? Bring in someone who knows that, is able to talk at a board level. And I think that's really the key message here, is about communication, so that directors, if you're in a not-for-profit, you've got people with such a wide variety of backgrounds, but all have a common expectation of where that standard of knowledge has to be. So maybe bringing in an external expert as well. So that's kind of the logic and the thinking. I could probably stop the presentation there and sort of just open that up. But what do you do? How, as a CISO, then do you get that message through? And what are the sort of the hot buttons that you can really tap into to get that common understanding. Because if you're just treating it as a technology solution and you're dealing with a board that is not technology literate, you're missing the point. So how do you present it as a strategic risk? What do you do? How do you get started? And I think a step-by-step journey, it really needs to be mapped out, and that's probably the easiest way that organizations at the board level can get started. And then it's incumbent on the IT department and the CISO team to map out that journey. And where do you go for a trusted source? And you mentioned the Australian Cybersecurity Centre and ASD. I think the Essential 8 that they put forward is a really good starting point, and that's got a nice maturity model associated with it, and that's a good trusted reference. And the Australian Cybersecurity Strategy actually references that, where one of the 3 pillars is the government. They themselves are implementing the Essential 8 strategies and moving along that maturity. So,
well, they're trying. I think one of the things definitely I would recommend for companies to walk through and register with the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. We'll start, as you say, that maturity model. ISACA also has a maturity model as well. So the maturity model is probably the way to start and do that sort of maturity model audit. And it depends on where security and where cybersecurity is positioned within the organisation as well. Because if the board is out sort of asking these questions on their own, they may be finding that they should have a CISO or a head of security. And it's not just cybersecurity anymore. It's often physical security comes into play, and also that operational and people security and that awareness. So obviously that maturity model will then match you as an enterprise to what you should be doing. And it's different for all enterprise. Every business is different. So you really do have to tailor that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring Kurt in and we'll talk about APRA and their regulations as well. And Geoff, I might keep you on initially in that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And by the way, before I bring Kurt on, I can see you're just about ready. Kurt, give me the nod if you're ready. Great. For the audience, if you last through to the end of this session, either the live session or when I put the edited version up, if you get to the last slide, I'll be asking the question. You get a chance to win one of 6 Yubico clears, the 5 CI clears. These are limited edition. So we'll get 6 out to you, but I'll wait to the last slide for that. And we haven't even got a comment yet. We have got people watching, which is good. But the first person to say good day will win an experience, the YubiKey, and I'll get that out to you as well if you're actually listening and interested. So thank you very much. Well, no doubt that we're listening to the recorded version otherwise. So let's bring Kurt on. Let me get rid of that. And g'day, Kurt Hansen. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'd say g'day. Thanks for having me. Do I get that prize? And I'd like well, pretty good to me.
Absolutely. And what I'll do, Kurt, I think I'm going to accidentally cut you out there. Yeah, I am. But anyway, just for your title there, Kurt Hansen, CEO Pure Security at Tesserent, and we're going to look at the APRA's cybersecurity strategy for the next 4 years. But Kurt, I believe you were, let me get rid of that, listening to that. Maybe, just your overview of the APRA cybersecurity strategy and what reference was made to the Australian cybersecurity strategy, if any. I do have a statement from APRA here that I can refer to, but just your take on APRA's cybersecurity strategy.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think APRA is probably aligning themselves with the increased focus on cybersecurity generally. They always have been focused on it. There has been the CPS 234 standard's been out for years. We've helped a lot of our clients navigate through that. And the first thing I think we should say is we've got to say a couple of things at the top level about this is that, not all boards are not cyber aware. Some boards are very good. And we deal often in our client engagement, sometimes directly with board members and certainly C-level that have got access to the board. So let's just say that there's a lot of very good boards out there when it comes to cybersecurity, especially in financial services. I mean, the reason that APRA's acted here is really interesting because the financial services market was really the first market that went online in an IT sense, decades ago.
Yeah,
I've led the industry in transforming, use of the internet online, and therefore they've had to be up with cyber. I mean, remember a few years ago, I had a good relationship with one of the CISOs, one of the big banks, and he would get asked to present at every second board meeting. Board members would take him out to lunch and say, "Hey, mate," I won't say his name, but, have you got enough money? Are you doing enough? You've got a few hundred people. Do you need more? And so, I think that's a good example. But what we're saying there, there's been an explosion of kind of new financial services, new products coming to the market, new businesses. And I think traditionally these startups and mid-market companies, they would want to attract, normally when you put a board together, you want to attract experience around your core business, which is financial services. So you're probably not bringing, someone with an IT or a cyber security background onto the board. So that's probably what APRA is saying, is that you now need to start to think about the skill level that's on the board, either get that talent, educate yourself about that talent, because we all know one thing, and I'm an ex-military man myself, policy starts at the top.
Yeah.
If the top generals or the chief of the defence force cares about soldiers having polished boots, the soldiers will have polished boots. If they don't, there's not going to be a lot of polishing going on.
But also the traditional sort of board has been, look, I'm a middle-aged white guy, but most of the boards are sort of in their 60s, they're quite dated, to be honest. There's a big talk around lack of diversity on boards as well, particularly in the finance. We see the top 4 banks have generally led with cyber security, no problem, but it's then those second tier and third tiers and across that supply chain as well. Is there a different message there? I mean, was APRA talking to the large banks there, or was he talking to the sort of the mid tiers to say, yeah, there's still some work to be done there? Because he's talking about auditing. It was pretty strong language, as if they weren't pulling weight.
Yeah, I think that they've got their eyes on about 800 organisations, so I don't think they would be particularly worried about the tier ones. But we've seen breaches in the tier ones, and but generally speaking, we're also following behind a couple of other markets globally, aren't we? We know Australia's behind the UK and the US in terms of cybersecurity. We know in the UK the Cbest standard requires the big banks to do some red teaming and with an external provider. That hasn't hit here yet, so I think it's a bit of a catch up. But I think it's also very much looking at the neobanks, the new financial, not just banks, but new financial sort of next generation financial services businesses coming onto the market, and then some of them are transforming into banks as well. So there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of expense involved in obviously setting up the right frameworks and doing things properly. And I think a lot of those company directors are probably thinking of profits and losses and the usual sorts of things first. I mean, if you turn a little bit to the healthcare sector, a bit of experience there, if you look at the board of a healthcare company, they've got doctors and people that care about patient care. That's their main focus. Yeah. So when a dollar has to be spent on cybersecurity, that's a dollar that's not spent on patient treatment. That's probably a better example than financial services. But I think, the boards do look where dollars are spent. And I think that's what APRA is trying to arrest, the fact that we've got to actually stop, take stock, look at the accountability, look at the skill sets, look at what the controls are in place. And most importantly, seeing that ripple down into the organisation, because people care about what they're next up, and what their leaders are caring about. That's what generally people care about.
There's a couple of areas I want to cover, and I'll probably forget one. I'll mention them both. The one is presenting to the board as a CISO. We're definitely hearing more from the CISO community that they have to justify the dollar, right? COVID-19, tightened economic situation. Mm-hmm. And it is, I think those days of how much money do you need might have gone or passed, and good luck to them if they're still getting offered that. I don't know how often that's going to be happening recently, and there's so many options of controls. You might have network layer controls or device control. There's different ways you can approach cybersecurity in an enterprise to get success. So there's that kind of one aspect of how do you measure, or how would you kind of come up with what you should be asking from the board and reporting to them? And then the other one was insurance. What maybe observations you're making around mentioning cyber insurance, and Geoff sort of brought it up as well. So yeah, welcome to take your pick on whether presenting to the board and how you should be asking for money and measuring the success.
Yeah, presenting to the board is massive, and I think the problem with not the problem, but the issue the CISO community have is the CISOs come from various different backgrounds. Some come from technical background, and if they approach the board that way, it's probably not a great thing. Some come from a more commercial background. Some CISOs we've seen have come from outside of cybersecurity, so they're still learning as they go. They're probably very good at talking to the board, but then they lack some of the technical meanings and understandings of what the implications are. So we see CISOs of all different categories. Some are better at the board, some need help. We work, on a regular basis with many consulting assignments that are going to the board for approval, helping with budget justifications, looking at helping identify what the problem is. So it really is an ongoing, a wave after wave of of increasing awareness. So there's a lot happening. There's no perfect CISO out there. There's no perfect sort of environment, and every company's in a different sort of situation as well.
Do you think they're referring, or do you find that they're referring to these strategic documents at a national level as well? We talked about it with the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Yeah. They are a key body, a recognised industry body, even by government themselves. So there'll be that level of engagement there. But how much can a sort of CISO point to a strategy and go, well, we need to be following that?
Yeah, look, I think we shouldn't be saying that there's no awareness at the board. There's the awareness that's there. We know that the boardroom's got far more awareness. I think what APRA is doing is just now forcing the controls and the audits in place to ensure that action's happening. So I think the CISO has really got a unique position at the moment. But they are competing for every dollar. They're competing for dollars that can be spent on many other needs that any business has. It's
a good lead, though, isn't it, from APRA? It's a good representation for the other industry sectors as well.
I think I'm like, not that financial services is perfect or by any means. I still think there's the new entrants. There's a lot of work to be done, but they are we would call them a mature cyber sector. Probably 35% of our business comes from financial services. We get a lot out of government, but those other industries like healthcare, critical infrastructure, not-for-profit sectors, there's a whole bunch of other verticals out there where I think they'll be looking to this and saying, wow, regulation's coming to the financial services sector. It's only a matter of time before we need to improve what we're doing. And why would you wait for regulation when really you've got, every business has clients, every business has their own data, they've got their own brand to protect. Geoff mentioned a lot of good reasons, a lot of things that were happening, in his previous global data. Why would you want to wait for regulation when it's really just good hygiene to be moving forward anyway?
Yeah, good business. But I think we've been talking, you over the last few years mentioned regulation, and the government's always, no, we don't need to regulate, They need to regulate, and until they get sort of, the board someone needs to show the board, we have to do this by law. Once it gets to the sort of senior council, and it goes, yeah, we've got to do it. Doesn't matter what it costs. Well, we have to manage the cost, but we have to do this. Then they'll do it. And they have been resisting for many, many years, but regulation will be required.
I think the word we're searching for there is accountability. So we're now seeing accountability at the board level. That accountability will absolutely be rolled down. I mean, you've been on board yourself, gentlemen, so you're going to roll that accountability down to the people and to make sure that there are processes and people connected to those processes that are delivering upon a controlled environment that you understand, that you can manage your risks in. You don't want to spend money on things that are low risk. You want to obviously spend money on things that are going to protect, you, your customers, and your brand.
Great. Okay, we do have some comments. There we go. Dan, good on you, Dan. I've got to get a Yubico to Israel, do I? Okay, all the best. We'll have you on actually in the show. And Alex, you've got yourself the Yubico as well. Well done. So I think, and thanks, Bianca in our Perth office. I think. Oh, the other, you I'd forget, insurance. What are your observations on cyber insurance around this as well?
It's definitely, as Geoff said, it's definitely picking up. So there's pretty well all insurance providers now offer it. There's a range, a plethora of different sorts of policies. I think it really comes down to each business really needs to do an IT security, cyber security, whatever you want to call it, risk assessment. And then what would come out of the risks and the controls around those risks would determine what type of policy they need. And then they need to go and obviously, like any insurance, go and find the broker and go and find the policies that are going to give you that protection. In some cases, it makes sense. In some cases, I think we see people insure for and maybe spend money on things that they should just really get the policies and the controls right. And then they wouldn't need the insurance.
Yeah. What role do you guys have in that? Are you doing insurance related work or applications or response at all?
No, we have we definitely do incident response. So we have a program around whether it's the phone could ring here today and all of a sudden one of our clients needs us. We do have ongoing incident response programs where you get SLAs and that type of thing around our security operations center. So we do help clients a lot with that sort of thing. There wouldn't be a week or so that goes by that we're not helping one of our clients with incident response. And then some insurance policies have better premiums if you have, controls in place, if you have an incident response program and that type of thing. So we generally partner with the insurance community. We don't offer it or resell it or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, is there anything else? I noticed in one of your comments the cyber controls around assets, even around sort of CCTV you mentioned on the physical security. You guys are ASX listed. You're probably one of the largest, I think your largest ASX listed cybersecurity company in the country. What are your observations of the industry general and the maturity and maybe even the convergence with physical security, how that's sort of coming along?
Yeah, look, we recently announced a couple of weeks ago a partnership with a business called Optic Security, headquartered in New Zealand, but about 60% of their business is in Australia. We're working with them because we see a real convergence between what's happening around the physical side. If you think about physical security, it's heavily moved into the infrastructure online. So access control, CCTV monitoring, what gets in and out of a building needs to be monitored and tracked. That's coming onto the internet. That's coming onto the intranet. And therefore, they have to have a cybersecurity posture around that. And then, of course, it's no secret that we have a phrase in our industry called red teaming. So red teaming is often part of a red teaming exercise where you act completely as an attacker.
Yeah.
And you do a reconnaissance and you work out how a hacker would actually, penetrate a network and create a breach. Sometimes the only way to do that, or the easiest way to do that, is use physical methods to actually get inside a building, or and so you generally use IT cybersecurity experts to do the physical breach, because once they physically breach, then they can plug in and do a lot of damage. And this is what hackers do. So there definitely is a convergence. We would also see a lot of clients, point spending a lot of money on cybersecurity protections if you leave the front door open, right? And if the data is easy to get into and that type of thing. So there's definitely a convergence there. I'm not going to get carried away. We're definitely very focused at Tesserent and within, one of our leading brands, Pure Security, around cybersecurity, which is all around IT security. But there's definitely an overlap there with physical, and it comes up regularly in conversations with clients to make sure that they've got full coverage of those things.
Great. Okay, well, look, we've been going for about 40 minutes. I think I'm just going to do a news update at the end. Maybe some closing comments, Geoff, from yourself as well on the strategy and how it's being implemented. There's obviously some time to go yet. The impacts maybe on Yubico as well, on the sort of that awareness. Has that helped you as a company with a product there reach out to the market?
So yeah, two parts to that. I think the strategies are a great framework for people to look at, but as you said and Kurt said as well, how do you as an individual organisation make sense of that, and how do you individually get started? So that will depend very much on what your risks are, what your appetite is, and what the potential consequences are. But so I think using those strategies, you can't rely solely on them. You've still got to do the work at your own organisational level to implement the response. So they're really good framework, but they're not the only answer. So there's work to be done. I think from what we see at Yubico, frameworks such as the Essential 8 are a really good way to help people get started. And obviously for us, multi-factor authentication, which is what we do, is one of those 8. And it's probably the one of the quick wins that organisations can leverage as well to gain that momentum on that maturity journey. So for us, I think it's a good framework, and it's helped our business and it's helped our awareness, and consequently sort of we reflect that back as well, that it is a good framework that people can leverage, that it's got a nice structure to it, that it digests it into simple chunks to help you get started.
Very good. There's been a little bit, we've had some different commentary on the strategy itself, so it's one to follow. I think it was 1.6 billion in terms of funding, and a lot of it went to government on their capability uplift. Kurt, some closing comments from you, and I I'm interested. I had 2 releases out of Pure Security this week, and I went for the APRA one because we were doing this one with Geoff, but there's also the QR code issue arising. So, yeah, maybe just some closing comments on how these strategies are helping sort of business and getting your awareness out there for your business. And then if you've got any insight into the QR code issue as well, welcome your thoughts on if there's enough awareness around QR code security.
Look, I don't think there's enough awareness around a lot of forms of security. So I think QR code is becoming very prevalent with COVID and people using it more now. But, that technology's been around back when I was in my old barcoding industries, and we're all getting that was 15 years ago. So there's nothing new there. What I think that says is that there are just so many innovative ways that the attackers are looking. The attack surface, whether it's QR code, whether it's more teleworking, or whether it's more we're extending, Qantas outsourcing to baggage handling. That means there's another third-party supplier now to a major tier 1 business. So does that third-party supplier have all the controls and security things in place because you're now passing customer data over to that organization? So the attack surface for the bad guys is increasing in so many complex and myriads of ways. And that's really allowing holes to be opened up in the fabric of an enterprise or a business.
Very good, and it's why I always consider securities recession-proof. It would always have a job because there's always someone out there. Optimistic pessimist is my tagline. There's always something bad going to happen.
Well, we've obviously never been busier, and when Scott Morrison joined our marketing team back in June this year, it was bloody fantastic.
Beautiful. And I keep remembering, I think it's the 16th of June or whatever it was. So very good. All right, guys. Look, thank you so much for the audience. Like I said, there is a Yubico key giveaway. I'm going to let Kurt and Geoff go. Gents, look, thank you so much. Kurt Hansen, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Pure Security and Tesserent. I've got in front of me. What does Tesserent mean? I was going to look that up.
Tesserent is our publicly listed, is the group. The name of the group public listed company. Does
it mean anything?
It's some old Greek algebraic mathematical word. Only the founder could actually, the original founder could only talk about that anymore.
Beautiful. I was going to Google it beforehand, but then I thought I might as well ask you. So, look, Kurt, thank you so much. First time I've met you, actually, so absolute pleasure. We'll try to have you on again as well.
That'd be great, Chris. There's plenty to talk about in our field.
Absolutely, all the time. Thank you, Kurt. I'm going to let you go. Cheers, mate. And Geoff, thank you so much. Like I said, I think it was episode 205. We had you on. We'll have you on the show notes. We'll hit you up for these 6 5CIs and get them out to the audience.
We look like that, and there's a few people popping in now.
Now
there's one on offer. So
it's amazing. When the moment you say, we've got something for free and we're giving it away, here they come. But I'm not saying, so Guy, thank you. Good to see you listening, mate. And you got one for sure as well. So look, Geoff, thank you so much. I'm just going to keep going for the next sort of 3 to 5 minutes and close off.
Oh, well, thanks very much for the
Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Good on you, mate. Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, so the Yubico, that's it there. Let me just close off just with some news of the day. Oh, I was going to show that earlier. So APRA, if you go to the APRA's website, they have their strategy on a single page there. And some comments out from, if I get his name up, no, I'm supposed to have it. Here we go. The executive board member, Geoff Schomburgk, gave a speech to the Financial Services Assurance Forum, and it's worth having a look, and I'll have that in the show notes, but otherwise it's apra.gov.au that you can check that out. So look, just some news from the marketplace to close off, and I'll do these at the end, and obviously if you can hang around till the end, you'll get, I think there's 3 Yubico keys left. Just some news that came out, and these are only about 4 or 5 of these. This is an interesting one from Global Data Report. China's investing $1.4 trillion on a state program to support their R&D, and this is part of their Digital Silk Road initiative, which is obviously part of their larger Belt and Road initiative, and basically ridding itself within the next 5 years of US-related tech. So one to have a look. That's on our Asia Pacific Security magazine. But that's a pretty aggressive stance that China's making, given everything else that's going on geopolitically as well. Former Defence Minister Christopher Pyne is now the non-executive director, has been appointed to the board of XTech. So one to have a look, and XTech's been doing some interesting things. That's a publicly listed security and defence provider. Interesting GRC on the comments we had today on the strategy. PX Partners has been launched. I think they're in Melbourne. Tanishray Dabril and John O'Keefe have started a new firm. So well done, guys. Best of luck for that. Hong Kong logistics tech startup Pickup has just secured their Series A funding. So you expect to hear more, but that's been backed by Vision Plus Capital, Alibaba Entrepreneurs Fund, Cyberport Macro Fund, Swire Properties New Ventures, and Spark Labs Taipei, and that they're going to head out across the Asia Pacific. So yeah, worth having a look up. Pickup Series A funding. And for the report of the week from AusCyber, Australia's Cybersecurity Sector Competitiveness Plan 2020 update has been released. It came out yesterday. It's on the marketplace for download with an article on the Australian Cybersecurity magazine. So welcome to have a look. That's a state-by-state sort of breakdown as well on the sector, with New South Wales out in front in terms of the cybersecurity industry, and predominantly servicing the financial services sector as well. So that was the report of the week. For those that want to email me at promoteme@mysecuritymedia.com, if you've seen that, we've got 3 left. So the first 3 to email me at promoteme.com, promoteme@mysecuritymedia.com, you'll get yourself a Yubico. But otherwise, Dan, Guy, and Alex, I'll reach out to you and get your addresses. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you on Friday's episode. And I can't remember who I've got. I think with Accenture, and we'll see how we go. But thank you very much.